Hello everyone, it's Michelle Lupton here, and I'm going to be showing you how I made two cards using the July card kit of the month, which is On the Road Heroescapes, and also the July clear set for 2025. So the kit actually has a few different components to it. One of them is a layering stamp set, which is the main component I'm going to be using today. It creates a scene of an outback highway or a desert highway or a countryside highway going off into the distance. And you've got the ground and the hills, and you've also got the sky in the background. So a wonderful horizon scene there. So I started with the road. And the reason I started with the road is because I thought it would be easier to place the sort of landscape around the road stamp. Because the landscape stamp has a sort of narrow part in the middle, it actually does bend a bit. So if I was to put that one first, I might have had it lined up incorrectly. So I put the road down first and then lined up the landscape around that. So I stamped the road in granite ink. And with almost every layer on this, I stamped twice, just so I could get a really good impression, because a lot of these are quite solid stamps, so doing an extra impression with them is sometimes useful. Now, with this one, I actually decided to ink up the top half of the stamp in a darker colour than the bottom half of the stamp. So for this card, I used Arctic, Paradise, Aegean, and a bit of aquatic. But in the other card, you'll see me go on to that in just a tick, I actually started with Passion Flower as the base colour, and then I used Amethyst, Grape Juice, and Azalea actually on the landscape. I thought it might look good to have sort of wildflowers on that one. So this one is just of a green landscape with a very sort of sunny blue sky with some clouds in it. I love that colour of the blue sky, so I used Dusty Blue and Cornflower. Now on this one, you can see I've got the purple hills and the pink wildflowers, but now I've used one of the coordinating dies to mask off the bottom half, so that instead of using the layering stamp for the sky, I'm doing some ink blending on the sky. So here's where I'm using the cotton candy. I used pink grapefruit right at the beginning, and then I'm using some more of this passion flower. So I used the passion flower on the landscape as well as in the sky. Now, when I took off my mask, I'm just going to rub away some of the temporary adhesive that I used, and I noticed that there was a little bit of a white gap between the sky and the landscape. So I wanted to fill that in so it was slightly less noticeable. So I actually went back in, I added my mask again, just a little bit further down than it had originally been, and just filled in a little bit with my ink, my blending brush, and it's really hardly noticeable at all there now. All right, so I'm finishing off with some grape juice ink to add some detail to the hills, and here I'm adding the aquatic ink to the detail of the hills. Now I decided to do two different sentiments on these two cards. So on the blue and green one, I'm using Big Hugs, and I've stamped it in black ink. So I've used Hero Art's intensified black ink here. And yet again, I will stamp a couple of times to make sure I have a really good impression. And with the friend, I actually used the grape juice ink as well. And again, I stamped multiple times there. And to layer up the sort of shadow layer, it was really relatively easy to layer, to sort of position, that layer for both of those stamps, mainly because you can see there's like a gap in the letter R and in the E and the D of friend, and also there's gaps in the B and in the G for big hugs, and those particular places in the stamp make it really easy to line up that layering stamp. Now I've lined up the coordinating die around these words, and I'm running it through my Spellbinders Platinum machine to die cut them out, and just running the other one back in the opposite direction. And I'm going to be basically popping these up, but I want to create a little bit of contrast. I mean, you could just use this for the eclipse technique, where you just cut out a word and pop it up and it's sort of hidden a bit. But I wanted to create a little bit more contrast between the word and the background. So what I decided to do is, instead of making the word brighter or more intense, I decided to make the background a bit more subtle. So to do that, I am adding a layer of vellum. So for this pink one, I cut a panel from my stamped panel. So it was smaller than my card front, and then I've got a piece of vellum, and I'm just folding it around the edge so that the whole background panel will be covered in vellum. So to do that, I've just folded using my fingers. I didn't even use a score tool. I find sometimes when I score vellum, I actually get cracks rather than prevent cracks, so I prefer to just fold vellum with my fingers. And I'm just adhering down those edges. I cut the corners off so it would lay relatively flat on the back, and there you can see my panel is sort of muted in the background, and the word stands out a little bit more. So now I'm stamping the clear stamp that looks like an airmail stamp onto the top of this panel to make it look a bit like a postcard. What I did was I stamped it in embossing and watermark ink, and then I inked up the same stamp in some, I think I used amethyst for this one, on top of it. So I've inked it with embossing and watermark, immediately followed by azalea, and then I've added some clear embossing powder. Some of the Hero Arts inks can be embossed over, but generally dye inks are a little bit more difficult to add embossing powder over, so I thought I would add the embossing and watermark ink with the coloured ink just to be sure. Now, I've also stamped these cancellation lines and the post department stamp, and I'm embossing those in silver just for something a little bit different. Now, I stamped out this little sentiment that says "You go, girl" onto some passion flower cardstock in I think I used grape juice ink for this one, and I've die cut it with the coordinating die, and then I'll start adhering my card together. So I am using some heavy duty tape runner here to make sure it all stays in place. And now I'm going to pop up my friend sentiment. I'm going to be using some foam adhesive for this component of the card, just removing the backing tape off it right there, and going to line it up to make sure it goes right over the gap underneath that vellum. And once I've done that, I'm just going to be using some liquid adhesive. So I'm using Hero Arts Precision Glue on the back of my stamped sentiment. And then I'm going to be using my Hero Arts tweezers to put that in place. I'm lining it up so it's kind of parallel to the word friend, so it's on a bit of an angle with the rest of the card. Now, I decided to construct this bluey green card slightly differently. I decided I wanted the whole card front to be my stamped panel. I didn't want to cut it down to a smaller piece. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting a piece of vellum that's the same size as my card front. So right now I have a white card base, I have my stamped panel, I have a piece of vellum that's all the same size, and then I've got my big hug sentiment on the top. Now I'm stamping the sending sub-sentiment that is also from the July card kit, and I'm going to die cut that out, and once I've done that I'll be able to put my card together. So I'm adding some dimensional adhesive, foam adhesive on the back of the word die, and then I'm going to put my card together. So in order to do this, first thing, I'm going to adhere my stamped panel minus the word onto my card base, again using some heavy duty tape runner adhesive. Now the next layer is going to be the vellum, but of course, vellum is notorious for showing adhesive through it. Adhesive is always it's very hard to get adhesive to not show through vellum. So if my vellum panel is the same size as my card front, I have to hide the adhesive somewhere, and the only place to hide it is behind the sentiment. So what I'm doing is I have laid my vellum piece on top of the card. I'm leaving it there so it's right in the correct spot. I'm taking the backing sheet off my foam adhesive, so making sure they're all ready to go. And then without moving the vellum, I'm just going to place that sentiment right down. But the vellum is not attached at the moment, so I'm taking the vellum off, and now I can add some liquid glue behind the sentiment, and that's basically going to hold the vellum in place. Okay, so I can pop that down, and that will hold that nicely in place. Now what I did was I actually added my little tiny little sentiment saying sending in the top left, and once I did that I realized, oh, I've got another place to hide some adhesive as well. So I just lifted up the vellum and just squirted a teeny tiny bit of adhesive behind the word sending, and that provides just that little extra bit of holding that vellum piece in place. So there's my two cards, same stamps, different colour scheme, slightly different techniques, but showing you a way of using vellum to sort of mute down the background when you want your sentiment to really stand out and take centre stage. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.